We are reading The Penitent Priest, a Father Tom mystery. It has always struck me as odd that people believe that priests don't have pasts, that they are somehow born full-grown men with Roman collars around their necks. People don't think this about their accountant, their lawyer, or their doctor, but they assume their priest knew he had a vocation from the moment he was born and grew up in some kind of preschool seminary before actually landing on the steps of their local parishes. Of course, the truth is completely different. No man can ever enter seminary until he is at least 18 years old, and it is rare that any do so that young. Most have probably tried some sort of illegal drugs. Almost everyone has driven too fast, gotten drunk on at least once, and disappointed his mother on numerous occasions. One or two may have even spent time behind bars, perhaps even outside the country. It is also fair to say that many, if not most, are not virgins, though there is no record kept concerning this. Most of those who are not have slept with women, though a few have slept with men. The requirement is chastity from the day you choose this life, or, more precisely, decide to see if God has chosen you for it going forward, no matter what you have done in the past. But a few of us, like me, don't have to be asked for details. The fact is right out there, because we have been married before. Yes, I'm one of the few people now on earth who at the end of my life will have received all 7 sacraments of the Roman Catholic Church, assuming someone's around to give me last rites, which I certainly hope they are. But it's not really the kind of thing you can plan for too much. Because people assume that we don't have pasts, people also assume their priests don't have emotional triggers, events that cause them flashbacks or discomfort. But of course we do. There are priests who still get a little sentimental about a song on the radio, or some for whom the smell of a certain food brings him back to Mother's house. For me, being back at St. Clare's today is one of these triggers. The last time I was here, I was not standing behind a font, but instead in front of a casket, that of my much-loved, much too young wife, Joan, who had died in my arms just a few days earlier. Today could not be any more different than that dreadful day, for while it seemed that my life was ending, and in a way part of it was, on this day the life of little Benedict James Reynolds is just the beginning, and it is my job to welcome him into the arms of the Holy Mother Church. And that's what makes me nervous. To make bad matters worse, little Benedict himself is something of a trigger, clad as he is in a family heirloom baptism gown. It's not unlike the one my mother passed down on to me when I took my first fiancée to my family home in Florida to meet her. Strangely enough, Mom didn't ask for it back when the engagement ended in a heated argument in a cheap apartment, instead of sacred vows in front of an altar. Instead, she waited until after I did marry and lost Joan with the child who might have worn that gown to ask for it back. Of course, by then, my sister Sonia had had numerous pregnancy scares, and as Mom said in her usual way, "You've already lost 2 women, Tommy. God only knows if you'll find anyone else." Apparently, God did know, because I never did find anyone else. Instead, I found him, and a very surprising vocation to the priesthood. That is why I'm standing before this altar now, about to pour holy water over the forehead of this squirming infant in the arms of his proud mother. We get to the part I've been dreading, as I carefully take little Benedict James from his mother and hold him over the font. I pick up the silver shell, dip it in the water, and pour the water over his head. The little boy is still and peaceful, looking at me with wide-eyed wonderment. I have worried for days that he'd scream the entire time and prayed that he wouldn't. Fortunately, my prayers were answered, and I handed Benedict back to his mother, breathed a sigh of relief, and turned to the assembly. Let us welcome Benedict James Reynolds into God's family. The crowd applauds, punctuated by the cries and screams of dozens of children in the pews. The 10:30 Mass is a lively, well-attended one. From what I can tell, the church is full almost to capacity, primarily with young families through all ages are represented. I recognize some of the people from years ago. Anna Luckgold, my mother-in-law, is here, third row from the front. Glenda Whitemill, the parish secretary, sits in the front row studying my every move. She was also at the 8 a.m. Mass. I make it through this, my first Mass, with more than an audience of 5 since, well, ever. Everything is fine until the end. I have just finished the prayers before communion when I see movement out of the corner of my eye. Glenda Whitemill has left her seat and moved to the altar with the other Eucharistic ministers. Instead of lining up with everyone else, Glenda comes right to my elbow and whispers, "Remind the parents to keep their children in the pews." What? They only come up if they're old enough to receive communion. Otherwise, they have to stay put. I look at her and shake my head slightly. I'm not going to do that. The parents can bring their children up for a blessing if they want to. But Father Anthony, is not here, I said firmly. Now please go back with the others. She looks at me, her eyes burning with indignation. Yes, Father, she says quietly. She walks back and stands with the others. After the final prayers, I say, please be seated for just a moment. The congregation sits down, mothers and fathers wrestling reluctant toddlers and their older children back into their seats. Before the final blessing, I say, I just want to say how happy I am to be at St. Clare's. I look forward to the next 4 months with you. And please know that my door is always open if you have any need or concern. I'll do my best, but I'm not planning on making any major changes since I've never been in a parish on my own before, so please bear with me as I find my way. I hear a wave of murmurs through the church, intermingling with the sounds of fussy children. I try to read people's faces. I think they look approving, except, of course, Glenda Whitemill. I let the murmuring die down. Most of you are newer to the parish. I pause before going on. Some of you may remember me from my previous life here in Myreton. Glenda jerks her head up at that. I hear more murmuring, and I think I notice a couple of signs of recognition. I look forward to renewing old acquaintances and making new ones for the short time I'm here. That's not true. My real hope is that my brief return to Myreton will be quiet and uneventful. I am only at St. Clare's because Archbishop Nolan ordered me here to fill in for Father Anthony. I have no more desire to stay here than I had when I left everything behind 15 years ago. I gave the final blessing, the final hymn starts, and I proceed down the aisle with the altar servers, led by a pair of very serious young men who look so much alike they must be brothers. Back in the vestibule, I thank everyone, introducing myself to Vincent Trent and his younger brother, Dominic. Vincent shakes my hand firmly and informs me, "Father Greer, this is my last Sunday here before I leave for college." But Dominic is well trained and completely up to taking my place as head altar server. I say casually to Dominic, "Is altar service a family apostolate for you?" He surprises by answering me with complete seriousness. "It was at first. When Vincent started out, he and I were about the only little boys in the church. It's only been in the last 10 years or so that the Lord has blessed us with so many young families. Father Anthony brought to the parish a wonderful combination of orthodoxy and family support." With this piece of information ringing in my ears, I go outside. The day is one of those sunny, clear days in mid-September that have the last taste of summer and the first taste of fall. It is warm, but with a cool breeze that makes being outside in a full mass vestments tolerable. I place my hand against one of the 6 white marble columns that line the portico. St. Clare's, an impossible structure, said to be one of the largest churches west of Baltimore. The white, iconic building was constructed in the 1850s to replace the earlier brick parish that had burned. Funded by the small donations of Irish immigrants who made their way into the Allegheny Mountains to work on the railroad, as well as the larger ones of the Meyer family who employed them. The church has seen untold numbers of baptisms, as well as weddings and funerals. Joan and I stood under its soaring vaulted ceilings the day we married. She wore white, looking impossibly beautiful, her veil covering her chestnut brown hair and her lace-covered shoulders. Father Anthony, whose place I'm taking, officiated that day, and then said her funeral mass just a few years later. People begin coming out. Children run past, chased by frazzled moms, hastily saying, "Thank you, Father," as they hurry by. I shake hands, saying, "Thank you very much," to people who say, "We're glad you're here," and "A good homily, Father." I am surprised at the number of people who pass by whom I have no memory of. Then a large man about my age stops. With him are 2 twin teenage boys. Leading on a cane, he extends a beefy hand. I laugh, grasp his hand, and give him a hug. "John Archman," I say. "How are you?" "Good to see you, Tom," says this big bear of a man. Or maybe I should say, "Father Tom." "Tom's fine. I didn't know you were still living in Meyerton." John nods. "Chloe wanted to raise the kids here. It's near her parents, and I like it too." "So, what are you doing now?" "Consulting," Archman says. "The new tech center outside of town. Bit far from DC for consulting, isn't it?" Internet teleconferences, you'd be surprised how little face-to-face time is required in IT consulting. John turns to his boys. "John, Mark, say hello to your godfather." The twins say hello, then ask their dad if they can hang out with their friends until it's time to leave. "Don't make me come look for you," John says as they run off. When he turns his back to me, he grimaces. "You okay?" I ask. "Yeah," he replies. "My leg still gets to me sometimes. I'll have to get back into physical therapy." Soon after 9/11, John enlisted in the Army. He served 2 tours in Iraq. During his second tour, an IED exploded as his squad was on patrol. He was the only survivor and was himself severely wounded. So, he says, looking me up and down, you're a priest now. I've got to tell you, I didn't see that one coming. You're not the first one to say that to me. Is is it that remarkable? No, not remarkable. It's just I remember you and Joan were like together. You were inseparable. I envied you two. That Chloe and I've never seen two people in love as much as you two were. I know how devastated you were after her. John pauses. Joan was special, he whispers. Yes, she was, I say quietly. Then you left and didn't tell anyone where you were going. No one heard from you for a while. Then, when Anna told us, none of us could believe it. He pauses. So how did it happen? It is a question I hear frequently, especially when people learn how old I was when I was ordained. Granted, most priests don't discern their vocations when they are in their late 20s. Even fewer receive the vocation after they're married. But my situation was different. So I keep getting the question. One, am I getting kind of tired of being asked? One, I am getting kind of tired of being asked. It's kind of a long story, I reply. I don't want to get into it right now. He holds up his hand. Okay, no problem. But you say you weren't in a parish before here? What have you been doing? I've been the archivist for the Archdiocese since my ordination, so I've been at the main office for 8 years. Well, he says, smiling, it's good to see you here. Chloe will be sorry she missed you. Home with a sick kid. Hey, we'll have to have you over for dinner. Catch up. I hesitate. Maybe when I get the time, but give Chloe my best. John's smile fades. Sure, Tom. When you get the time. I'll tell Chloe you sent your best. I watch as John, leaning on his cane, goes off to find his boys. So you've seen John, Anna says. Having come up behind me, I turn. He missed you, she says. You were his best friend, and he was mine. He could have used a friend over you, a friend like you, over the last few years. I looked at her, puzzled. He hasn't had an easy time since you left, she explains. He seems fine to me, except for the cane. Looks are deceiving. He's struggling. Chloe tells me these last few years have been hard. I remember how John was after he came home. The physical wounds were slow to heal. The emotional wounds festered. Joan and I were as supportive as we could be, but after a while, John just withdrew. I look at her. I don't know how to answer. Anyway, she smiled. Good job. Everyone seemed really pleased. Except Glenda. Oh, she waves her hand. Don't worry about Glenda. She's had the run of this place for years. It's about time someone stood up to her. I didn't want to cause a scene. You didn't. You did what Father Anthony should have done a long time ago. But Father Anthony isn't inclined to confront her, and Glenda is. Yes, she certainly is. The day arrived. Glenda Whitemill made it very clear what she thought of me. I don't know why the Archbishop sent you, she had said. Father Anthony's coming back. He doesn't need to be replaced. I'm not replacing Father Anthony, I said. I'm just here for 4 months while he rests. Can we get along? We can get along just fine, having a priest show up for Mass. She went on like I hadn't said anything. When I spoke to the Archbishop, you called the Archbishop? I told him we didn't need a resident priest. I asked him to just send someone around for Mass on Saturday nights and Sunday. He gave me some hogwash about a parish needing to have a resident priest. I told him exactly what I thought. She went on like that all the while, showing me through the rectory a two-story house sitting next door to the church. A walk from the front door led to what I assumed was the side door of the church. Another path led to the sidewalk. The first floor had a living room, dining room, kitchen, guest bedroom, and what would be my office and Glenda's office. Upstairs were two bedrooms, Father Anthony's and another guest room, where I would be staying. The furnishings looked like rejects from Mike and Carol Brady's home, frankly hideous in shades of brown, yellow, and that tried and true staple of the 1970s color scheme, avocado. There was a worn and threadbare quality to the whole place, much like White Mill herself. I realize I have not seen Glenda come out of church. Not knowing where she is makes me nervous. I look around in the crowd and finally spot her. She is standing on the corner speaking to a man about my age. He is also about my height, but wears a pullover hoodie and jeans that hang loosely about his frame, showing he is quite a bit skinnier than I am. "Who is that?" I ask Anna. She turns. "Who?" "That guy over there talking to Glenda." They are too far away to hear, but she is shaking her right finger in his face, and he's shaking his head emphatically. Anna says. "I'm not sure. I know Glenda has a nephew, and that could be him, but I can't say for sure. Not sure I've ever seen him." The man storms away from Glenda, who just stands there looking after him. "He's not a member of the parish?" "I don't know. He could be. Maybe he just comes to the earlier mass or only shows up at Christmas and Easter. I really can't say. I don't know everybody, Tom." Glenda turns. She looks upset, looking around to make sure no one had observed the scene. She walks quickly down the sidewalk to the rectory. The crowd has thinned out, so there are only a couple of small groups talking to each other, their children running up and down the steps. Some have started an impromptu game of tag on the grass between the church and the parking lot. Two brown-haired twins start wrestling for reasons only known to them. A young woman, trailed by a little girl with brownish blonde hair, rushes to two boys and pulls them apart. They're soon joined by a larger, muscular man who takes both boys by the arm and leads them away, either for a firm talking to or for a more painful exhortation. "Why don't you come over for lunch?" Anna says. "Nothing fancy, just sandwiches." I hesitate. "Anna, I'm kind of tired. I'm going to see her this afternoon," Anna goes on. She pauses to let that settle in. "It's been a long day," I say. "I'm really drained. Maybe another day." She looks at me but says nothing. I see the accusatory look in her eyes and brace myself. Then she smiles. "It's okay, Tom." She pats me on the arm. "Some other time." She begins to walk away and then turns and says, "I'm sure she likes them." "Likes what?" "The carnations," Anna says. I shake my head. "The peppermint carnations?" "Peppermint carnations, Joan's favorite flower." "What about the peppermint carnations?" I say, thoroughly confused. "You really don't know what I'm talking about?" Anna says. "You haven't been sending peppermint carnations to her gravesite once a month?" "No, it wasn't me," I say. "Sorry." Anna sighs. "Oh, I just assumed. I guess it's one of her friends." She begins to walk away. "For how long?" I say after her. "It's been a long time. Almost 15 years," she says over her shoulder. "I thought it was you." Guess I was wrong. With that, Anna walks away. I walk back into the church. In the sacristy, I take off my vestments and turn the lights off. I look around. The only light comes through the stained glass windows, and from the candles, incense still hangs in the air. I can also smell the oil on my hands from anointing the Reynolds baby. The building is at peace. I am not. We'll come back for chapter 2.